Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. A Wheatley mother is mourning the loss of her son after he was allegedly sold poison to self-harm. She's turning her pain into something greater. We have her story tonight. Plus, all that rain has drowned crops in Essex County, leaving some veggie delivery companies scrambling. And one of the oldest churches in Windsor is dealing with some damage after last month's turbulent weather, and it may not be that easy to fix. I just want to start with a warning that our top story tonight contains distressing details that discuss suicide and self-harm. It's been a dark 6 months for a Wheatley mother. Her 19-year-old son's life was cut short when he allegedly bought a lethal substance off the internet from a Toronto area man. That man, Kenneth Law, is now facing 14 counts of counseling or aiding suicide in Ontario. Police have linked him to more than 100 deaths around the world. Thomas Dagla has more.
Kim Prosser has spent hours on the shores of Lake Erie, trying to heal since the death of her son Ashton last March. He was a month away from his 20th birthday.
It was like all of this potential it's just gone.
She's the first parent to speak publicly about a loved one's suicide that prosecutors blame on Kenneth Law. Accused of selling a potentially lethal substance online, Law is facing 14 charges of counseling or aiding suicide in Ontario. Kim suspects Ashton found a pro-suicide forum that led him to Law, when what her son really needed was help.
We're not doing enough. There isn't support for everyone who's struggling in mental health.
She says Ashton's mental health declined when his high school classes went virtual early in the pandemic. Around the world, families are speaking of their late loved one's struggles, with Law suspected of links to more than 110 deaths in multiple countries.
He's destroyed lives, so many lives.
Imogen Nunn was known to her TikTok followers as Deaf Immy, raising awareness about the deaf community and mental health until she took her own life this year.
It was really difficult to get access to deaf mental health services.
Law was arrested near Toronto in May. Now police in BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan all say they're investigating. Law sent 160 packages across Canada, allegedly marketing products to vulnerable clients.
To see someone who might be undermining that by promoting or talking about suicide as a way to feel better is really hard to watch.
That was the CBC's Thomas Dagla reporting. Now, I sat down with Prosser on the beach in Wheatley to hear more about her son Ashton, how challenging the pandemic was on his mental health, the barriers around accessing help, and what her healing process looks like now. What was he like as a kid?
Funny, brilliant, just amazing, loving soul. Colorful, just this crazy awesome smile. It was like all of this potential it's just gone. The start of adulthood and then he never made it there. Classes went online and in-class changed. Then Ash started to change. The first phone call that I got from him to say that he was having thoughts of suicide, I was at my friend's house and he was just struggling to make it through school.
In what ways do you think COVID played a part in your son's mental health?
Yeah, hugely. I mean, to go from straight A's to not struggling to graduate is night and day difference. He was doing okay. Like, he was here at Christmas. We all got tattoos together. He drew them. He loved drawing, so I was trying to encourage that. I was in Arizona a couple weeks, and I got a call saying that he was gone. You know, he would send emails to places that would be of support and get nothing back. nothing, like not even a response. It's not enough. We're not doing enough. There isn't support for everyone who's struggling in mental health. I have spent hours and hours on this beach trying to find a way to heal. This fundraiser is to, keep me and my son connected and know that if I could do anything to help somebody else in that situation, just one.
The most important thing mental health experts say you can do for a loved one or yourself is to speak up. If you or someone you know is struggling, here is where you can get help. The Canada Suicide Prevention Service, Kids Help Phone, which includes live chatting, counseling on their website, and the Hiatus House Crisis Line, which is a local organization that can provide help. All of these numbers can also be found in this story on our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. Windsor Essex EMS wants to optimize its performance when it comes to response times. They put forward a plan to Essex County Council yesterday outlining ways to do that, to help address some of the challenges around offload times. Council has agreed to hire paramedic aides, up to 8 of them. Bruce Crowder is the chief of Essex Windsor EMS. He spoke earlier today with Windsor Morning.
It allows the paramedics to offload their patients or go into the emergency department, and these aides go in and they get the vehicles and the ambulances ready to go back in service. So they clean them up, restock them, make sure everything's in their place so that the transition from time of offload back into the community is much more shorter.
The chief says he hopes students enrolled in the paramedic program at St. Clair College will take advantage of the positions. Well, farms in Essex County are still reeling from the massive rainfall that hit our region a few weeks ago. This is just some of the crops that were damaged and drowned out at Lee and Maria's in the county. It's a food bin subscription delivery service. That area saw 190 millimeters of rainfall in a very short period of time last month. All of their fall produce like broccoli, pumpkins, beans, and squash has now been lost. Now there's not much left to harvest.
It's a long process. You've got months in growing and your time and energy and then labor in getting the product grown and harvested. It's quite a bit. So when you lose a lot like this, it's devastating.
The Ontario Fire Marshal's office is now looking into that massive scrapyard fire in Chatham. We now know that roughly 20 cars and numerous bins of tires were burning at A. Gold & Sons yesterday. It prompted a massive response. 45 firefighters from 5 stations were needed to put out the fire. CK fire officials say the heat, strong winds, and the large size of the fire made it hard to handle. No injuries have been reported. There's no indication yet as to what may have sparked the fire or the value of the damage. Both truck drivers and residents living in West Windsor say they'll be relieved when some traffic at the Ambassador Bridge is alleviated through the new Gordie Howe Bridge. To avoid traffic, truck drivers have been driving on residential roads to get to the bridge entrance. It's caused students to feel unsafe when large trucks are gumming up streets. A truck driver says she understands the concerns pedestrians may have, but says they're also dealing with a challenging amount of traffic.
We do try to be very respectful. When school's in and the university students are in, they cross the street safely. I find that there has never been any sort of danger when I've done that, but I do understand that it is quite the inconvenience for people who live around there, as much as it is an inconvenience for us.
A recent CBC story highlighted the heavy truck traffic on Huron Church Road. The City of Windsor says they are embarking on a review of all approved truck routes in the city, which they hope will be completed next year. The Executive Director of Operations for the city says the hope is the new bridge will ease traffic on Huron Church. One of the oldest churches in Windsor has endured some damage it's never seen before. The windy conditions last month that generated tornadoes in the region has bent an important part of the building, the steeple. The original cross atop St. John's Anglican Church was from the 1860s, and it may not be so easy to fix.
And you can tell the direction of the tornado or the wind. It's come from the river and bent it towards the east there at the top. The night of August 23rd, when we had several tornadoes tear through our area, one of them apparently passed directly over St. John's Church. Thank goodness it didn't touch down on St. John's Church, but it came over, and as a result of the wind, a lot of damage to trees in the cemetery and the quite obvious damage to the steeple on the church. I thought, oh no, I can't believe it. In fact, it was the next morning I came and I could see it the moment I turned past Detroit on Sandwich Street. I could see it right away, and I knew, oh, it had to be the storm. And my first thought was, how are we going to repair that? It is the original from 1860s some point, and the original cross, and as far as I know, the original copper cap. The tower is the oldest part of the building. It is absolutely our intention to have it repaired. We want it to look good. St. John's is part of the community, and we don't want to be bad community people by having a ugly, damaged-looking steeple in the community. So it will require specialized contractors. Your average roofer can't do that. Because of its height, and because of course, the steepness of the roof, it will be people who have expertise in that kind of reconstruction.
Ontario's ombudsman says the inspection system in long-term care homes broke down at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. In a new report, Paul Dubé says homes weren't being inspected when the first wave of the pandemic hit, at times when hundreds of residents died. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has the details.
Welcome to everybody.
Ontario's ombudsman, Paul Dubé, found no inspections happened during the height of COVID in long-term care homes.
This important oversight function collapsed when COVID hit.
It was spring 2020. Over the 7 weeks when no inspections happened, more than 700 long-term care residents died. Dubé says the pandemic shone a light on an inspection system that already wasn't working.
It was already strained before the pandemic, but it was not ready. Didn't have a plan, didn't have sufficient people.
The report details heartbreaking stories. One family member complained to the ministry 4 times over a 1-month period in spring 2020 about disturbing conditions in his mother's long-term care home. Nothing was inspected until October, many months after his mother had already died from COVID, one of 53 people who died with the virus at that home. Dubé says once inspections did resume, homes faced minimal consequences.
Some of the homes were let off quite easily, and when you look at the scale of sanctions that could have been imposed, they were often given the least onerous sanctions.
One issue is that inspectors refused to go into homes at one point, saying it was unsafe. Dubé says the system didn't make it safe. The opposition blames the government for being unprepared.
The failure of this government led to preventable deaths in long-term care homes during COVID-19. It was unreasonable, unjust, and wrong.
Part of the report looks at the tragedy at Orchard Villa, where 70 residents died. Paul Parks was one of them. His daughter Kathy says she learned from the report that 50 residents were already infected at a time she was told it was only a few.
I was trying to sort of raise a red flag and say something really bad is happening here, and people are about to die. And then days later, my father did pass away.
Today, she's been talking with other families.
One family member said, like a gut punch. It's like hitting rewind, and now I'm back in, April of 2020, but with more information, which is so hurtful. It's so hurtful.
She hopes the report will lead to change. The Ombudsman makes 76 recommendations, including that the ministry always have people available for on-site inspections, clarify when inspectors are required to be on-site during any future pandemic, and ensure it briefs inspectors on emerging threats, as well as having PPE available. The Ministry of Long-Term Care says it accepts all the recommendations and has already made some progress, including more money to double the number of inspectors. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
The federal government has named a Quebec judge to head a public inquiry into foreign interference in Canadian elections. She will preside over the independent investigation looking at alleged meddling in the 2019 and 2021 federal elections. CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian has the latest from Ottawa.
After months of putting it off, the government's agreed to a public inquiry into foreign interference.
We have arrived with the full support of the opposition at the best person to lead this inquiry.
That will be Quebec Court of Appeal Judge Marie-Josée Hogg, tasked with looking into foreign interference by China, Russia, and other state and non-state actors during the federal elections in 2019 and 2021.
We arrived not at a consensus, but at a unanimous agreement on all of those details.
But the opposition had been asking for a public inquiry since last winter, following multiple news stories leaning on anonymous national security sources and leaked documents. They alleged Beijing attempted to interfere in the last two federal elections to favor victories for Liberal MPs over the return of Conservatives to power. The Liberals punted the decision over an inquiry to Special Rapporteur David Johnston, who wound up resigning after recommending against one.
Justin Trudeau has tried to do everything to avoid this.
The Conservatives had been leading the charge against Johnston, accusing him of being too close to Justin Trudeau's family. They're showing more cooperation for now.
We accept the nomination of Justice Hogg, and we will continue to not just push for the government to be open and transparent and provide all the documents and waive all the cabinet confidences that may be required.
National security experts say she'll have her work cut out for her.
The mandate being given to the commissioner is a pretty broad one, and I hope that the first thing that she does is to prepare a fairly comprehensive inventory of what's happened, not only directly on the elections, but on what's happened between elections.
All this with tight timelines. Hogg is expected to produce an interim report by the end of next February and a final one by the end of next year. She officially starts her job in less than 2 weeks. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Ottawa.
You can't see the watch parties from the tower cam, but you know there are plenty of people in Detroit and here in Windsor, Essex, tuning into the Lions season opener. We'll get your weather forecast for the start of football season coming up. Colette, I know this is a bit of an exciting day for you and for many other football fans. The Detroit Lions take on the Kansas City Chiefs tonight in the first regular season game. Now, I know you're a Kansas City fan, but there are lots of Lions fans in Windsor, Essex, who've been promised a decent season. If you're a Lions fan, maybe traveling to Kansas or you're just watching the game, what's the conditions going to be like?
Yeah, I thought it'd be kind of fun, Meg, to take a look at the forecast, and I hope folks aren't throwing things at their TV when you hear I'm a Chiefs fan. Listen, y'all, I grew up in Kansas, so you gotta give me that. But just having a look at what's going on. So kickoff at 7:20 their time, 8:20 our time. The sun doesn't set in Kansas City until 7:40, so still there'll be some daylight, a few clouds, and about 27 degrees. I love this this. Maybe some of you aren't old enough to remember, but it's like an Atari set. And in terms of the winds for any, kickoffs and for the kickers out of the east, maybe 5-10 kilometers an hour. So it shouldn't really have an impact on things there either. So enjoy the game if you'll be watching it. Are you enjoying the change in conditions as we're getting this new air mass kind of filtering its way in? Is there some humidity? Yes, not much. And look at the change now across much of the province as that front keeps trekking eastward. And as it goes, yes, there's been the active weather along it, but really we just have some residual, a few kind of isolated and lighter showers, a little towards Leamington, a little downpour there, Point Pelee through that region. But, there's not much more in here. I put a slim chance in the overnight and early tomorrow morning of us seeing an isolated shower. Otherwise, the sky's kind of variable. So we get some clearing, it tries, and then the clouds form back in. So we'll call it mostly cloudy and then becoming more of a mix of sun and cloud late day for Friday. But it is going to be a fresher feel to this air mass as it comes in here. And the temperature is more indicative of what it's actually going to feel like. So the wind's a little bit blustery as they turn to the north-northwest just through the evening and a bit through the overnight. And then they really back off again as we go through the day on Friday. Overnight temperatures really comfortable sleeping conditions again without the humidity, able to crack those windows, and then 22 degrees for Friday. Looking into the weekend, it does look like a mix of sun and cloud into Saturday. Clouds might be a little stubborn in a few areas, but 23 degrees. So these temperatures seasonal or even a tiny bit below in the case of tomorrow. Sunday, again, a mix of sun and cloud, about 24 degrees. And then we'll pop up into Monday ahead of another system going through. And then that's likely to bring Meg a couple of days of showers before things kind of dry out again towards the end of next week. And I don't know if I should be outing her, but I understand your mom is a Chiefs fan too, so
she is.
She and I go Chiefs. Sorry, everyone else.
Thanks so much for that, Colette. Enjoy the game tonight.
Yeah, thanks.
Coming up, a shark attack has halted a journey around the world. We'll tell you more after the break. Canada is experiencing shorter and less severe winters due to climate change, but warmer weather also brings with it more bugs, many that carry infectious diseases. Now, a Toronto mother is warning Canadians to be on alert for insect-borne infections after her young son fell severely ill. Lauren Pelly has the story.
Mom's right here. Hi, buddy. It's okay.
Catherine McKissick's son Cameron spent a month in a Toronto hospital suffering from dangerous brain inflammation. Lab reports later showed the 6-year-old was infected with Jamestown Canyon virus. It's a rare but rising threat spread across North America by mosquitoes, and one his mom had never heard of.
How do you protect your child from a mosquito?
The family didn't travel this summer, so she assumes her son was bitten right in their own community. McKissock now worries more Canadians could be at risk.
I'm really hoping that they start testing for these things and they start watching for it and studying it a little bit closer.
We actually don't really know how much of these infections are here, and there certainly is a major knowledge gap.
This doctor warns limited testing and awareness means many cases of insect-transmitted infections could be underreported, even though climate change is fueling their spread.
We're seeing, shorter winters that aren't as cold, and basically the expansion of insects that can transmit these infections.
West Nile and Lyme disease are two of the big ones. Once rare in Canada, thousands of cases have been reported in recent years. Surveillance is also ramping up for other diseases. Ontario just began tracking 3 more tick pathogens this summer, all of which can make humans sick. But the province didn't provide any data. CBC News reached out to every regional health unit and found there could be dozens of possible cases already under investigation.
Of course, it starts out that way, and then, what it'll look like 5 years from now, we can only imagine.
Other leg. McKissick's family now uses bug spray, one of the few tools she has to try and keep her kids safe. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Oshawa, Ontario.
Australian maritime officials had to conduct a rescue at sea this week when a vessel suddenly faced an unusual emergency. Parts of a small inflatable catamaran had been damaged in a series of attacks by tiny sharks called cookie cutters. 3 people from Russia and France were manning the vessel. They were attempting to make a round-the-world journey. They were approaching Australia from the South Pacific when the attack happened. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.